Welcome once again to the Success Curious podcast. It's your man Andy here, and today we have got two English persons on the podcast. We are being taken over by King, in country, and I have got myself someone who I have so much damn respect for, not just because of how she goes about her business generally, her structures, her setups, and all that sort of stuff. Massive amount of respect for that. But Abbie White is the CEO and founder of Sales Redefined, and her mission is to redefine sales and growth for the digital AI era. Now, it sounds, team, like she's very much AI and all that sort of stuff, and she's riding on that geek wave all the way through to all the way through to the shores. But Abbie is most certainly someone that knows her way around sales. Of that, there is no doubt. She was flown over from the UK for her skill set in selling stuff to people, and she's just gone to the moon with it from there. Abbie, you're an absolutely delightful human being. You're an incredible operator, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today?
Great, thank you. I tell you what, if I ever need a pep talk or a boost, I'm just going to play back that last 30 seconds and it'll be Tony Robbins style firing myself up for the day. Thank you for the intro.
Oh, look, pleasure. No, seriously, it's pleasure's absolutely mine. It's been such a joy to just follow you, for want of a better word, not in a stalkery way, in a purely plutonic way, of course. But the way that you go about the game of business, the game of branding, the game of how you broadcast success methodologies within sales and so on and so forth, it makes it very, very obvious that you have a very clear and grounded understanding of what success means to you, as well as how you broadcast it in so that other people can see what it means to them as well. Before we crack on though, because this is going to be an amazing conversation, for those people that don't know who you are, can you just give us a quick sort of elevator spiel as to who you are and what got you over to these shores?
So I started at IBM in the UK, specializing in sales and was climbed up through the ranks. And then IBM did a program around growth markets. And they needed someone to do the hard job of coming to Australia to lead the national sales team for a $100 million business unit. And, team player that I am, put up my hand. I will do that. I will move to Australia. So I think I saw sunshine and beaches and living in Australia and, living the dream. I don't think I really thought through the fact I was taking on a job that nobody in Australia wanted. There was a reason they were going overseas. And as everyone told me after I moved here, there was a bit of a poison chalice to turn around the performance of the team, which we did. I had that and sort of climbed through the ranks, and then a really good opportunity came up for me to leave corporate and go out on my own in the world. And I think, as you know, when you start a business, you broaden your horizons from sales. You've got to learn about go to market, you've got to learn about growth, you've got to learn about marketing. So I sort of really started to broaden from there. So full circle today, working with all different businesses around their growth in a number of different ways, whether that's helping them at their kickoff, whether that's helping them with their consultancy and strategy, helping them with their lead generation. But ultimately, the game for me is I'm just interested in businesses, people who've got big ambitions and, need a bit of a hand of, right, how do you get there? It's like a game for me. It's fun.
Yeah, nice, man, nice. And ironically, that's actually when I was in real estate sales myself, that was the only way that I managed to compute the whole thing, was turning it into a game myself. Like turning it, look, I know if I score more goals than the others, then my bank balance is going to take care of itself, sort of thing. So, I love the fact that you have that sort of game theory analogy, which is absolutely wonderful. Abbie, it's really, really interesting that you've really looked at how you can turn the pressure of sales, because that's the big problem, right? Is the pressure of sales, and when you extend this out to the pressure that success, the journey of success can bring as well. Um, how do you handle pressure yourself? Like before we get into the meat and veg of this thing, how do you handle pressure, particularly coming from a sales point of view? How did you process it? Is it something that you've thrived on since day dot, or is it something that you've had to work on? Like, talk to me about your sort of interpretation of pressure.
Yeah, look, I think to a certain extent in a sales environment, I've always thrived on it. Like having a big number that you're like, how on earth am I going to do that? Or for me, like the big hairy goal with business of going, awesome, blank piece of paper, where the hell do you start? I think to a certain extent, I've thrived on that. I've always taken on the roles and the projects to a certain extent. They're a challenge. They interest me, they excite me, they capture and hook my attention. I'm quite obsessive around it. I think pressure can go too far. I would say probably like last year, might be year before, had a year where we had other challenges that I think the pressure just sort of almost went too far. And so I think it's always harder, like for me, when it's a game of business, a lot of that can be fun. It can be exciting. How do you crack the code? How you get the sales strategy right? Like that's fun. I think it's different sort of pressure when you have people issues or, as you know, being a business owner, you get all sorts thrown at you, whether it's people issues or legal issues or things like that. That sort of pressure for me, I've always found a lot harder because, as a business owner, that is really, really difficult. Um, but where I can, I probably try and break it down into bite-sized chunks I can swallow. I try and take a first step, no matter how small that is, so that I can do it. And then, yeah, I will try and turn it into a bit of a game and an experiment and try and have a bit of fun with it. I'll challenge myself.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, pressure can be a real nasty, ugly beast if we let it consume us, and it can consume us from time to time. I don't think anybody is absolutely void of it, right? I think everybody cops pressure in a negative sense at various stages. I don't think you're human if you don't. So it's really interesting that you look at that whole bite-sized chunk thing. So we might come back to that, but before we crack on with what we really wanted to talk about today, need to ask you the question that we ask all of our guests, which is, what is your definition of a successful human? Now, obviously, as per my book, it's into four elements: success, connection, influence, and happiness, and they all live in an ecosystem where one can't survive without the other. Abbie White, what is your definition of a successful human?
I think for me, it has continuously evolved. If you'd have asked me that question 10 years ago, I would say I probably had quite an arrogant and limited materialistic answer for you. I had goals of by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have the sports car and I'm going to have the big sales manager job and I'm going to be happy if I have all these things. And I did it all and then was like, oh, that's really not all it's cracked up to be. What do I do now? And I had a bit of a moment of feeling lost. Now, if you ask me today, 10 years on, um, I look at it much more rounded. And my former business partner got me to do a brilliant exercise of doing like a wheel of life exercise. What do you want out of life? So for me, I want freedom and flexibility to be able to travel, go back home to the UK, take my son overseas. I want freedom and flexibility that if I decide on a Tuesday I'm going to take my son to soccer, I'm going to take my son to soccer. I want freedom and flexibility to sort of make some of my own decisions. I care about my health and well-being and my fitness. So I sort of did this wheel of life, or what are all the things that are important to me? Financial stability, building up that sort of financial stability for the future. And I did all the different areas of life and then looked at making decisions around the business, my career, by going, what will give me that? And that's how I kind of decided. And so today, a lot of what I've been building towards has been, can I build in financial freedom, but can I also build in flexibility? So I was telling you before we went live, I'm about to go to Europe for 6 weeks and basically work remotely, relatively limited, to be able to manage and run our membership, which I can do anywhere in the world. It has taken me a bloody long time to get to that point. But now for me, success of what I'm looking at is that flexibility around family because I've got a really young son. So I would say and if you ask me again in 10 years time, I'll probably give you a different answer, but that's where I am today on the success that I'm looking for.
Really interesting how you talk about freedom and flexibility, freedom and flexibility, freedom and flexibility. That, freedom of choice is is a really, really important thing, is a really interesting thing. And a lot of people tend to struggle. And I sort of want to ask you about this holiday that you've got coming up, because I was been speaking to a number of people this month, having had, so April, for those of you that don't live in Australia, April's been a real pain in the arse for small business owners because it's had 2 long weekends due to public holidays and then a general election that then stalled a lot of stuff as well. So it caused a lot of people to write off bits of April and then throw in school holidays, people going away and so on and so forth. People have come back this month and I've had numerous conversations, Abbie, where they've almost resented going away. They've almost like feel like they're back to square one because of the fact that they took a holiday, right? And this is something that a lot of people that are in business, a lot of people that are in small business or sole traders, taking a holiday is one of the hardest things to do because you don't feel that you don't feel that you should, not just because of the fact that you're losing income by not being around or whatever, but you're also losing income from any opportunities that you've got coming up in the immediate future as well. Do you get nervous around taking time off? And if not, how have you managed to conquer that?
Yeah, so look, I think context is everything. I'm now just coming up to 8 years in business, and this is the first time in 8 years I've been able to do it in the way I'm about to. So 100%, I was the person who, when I was giving birth to my son, I'm still emailing and pushing through payroll as well as pushing out baby. That was me. Um, so, quite the vivid imagination for everyone there. We're all friends here. So I think that I need to be realistic because I don't want this to be an Instagram version of business. 1,000,000% every single holiday I have ever been on, I have worked. And even when I'm going to Europe, I'm still going to be checking in with my team. I have a couple virtual presentations, but on the whole, it's minimal. But it has taken me through hell and back and 8 years to actually build and design a business, largely around a membership-based model, that can actually allow me to do that. And I went on many, many detours beforehand, and those detours didn't give me that flex.
Yeah, okay. So have you got like one or two, even just one example of where you've tried to build something that that's ended up not working in terms of giving you this free, in terms of this search, this hunt for freedom, from because this is the thing, right? A lot of people start a business thinking that it's going to give them freedom, and then they end up just getting shackled to their business, right? Because they've gone away from the payroll. So,
Yeah,
um,
100%.
so
Yeah.
tell us more about it. Tell us an example of where you've tried something and it's just gone on its arse.
Oh, totally. So for the first 6 odd years plus, we were building a business model that turned into almost the nearest business model to contextualize. It's probably like around a marketing agency. We were helping people with their lead generation. So we would do the creatives, the campaigns, the assets. We had marketers, we had designers, and we were running it. Now that business model is 24/7, always on. I could be delivering a keynote. I could be looking after a sick kid. Doesn't matter. I would then get back online and have a million different things within that campaign to try and, Abbie, can you peer review this? Right, we've got a problem with that. This isn't performing. It was 100% of the time, always on, working till midnight, a huge proportion of my time, burnout central. And what was challenging, we scaled it to over $1 million revenue a year, seven-figure business, and it was the biggest handcuffs ever. And I kind of was trying to make a decision of going, hang on, that wasn't what I really set out to build when, like you said, this business owner, flexibility, I'm going to live between the UK and Australia. And actually I work more hours than corporate and all the rest of it. And I was on a trip and my former business partner said to me, he's like, Abbie, you've got casino mindset. You've put so much on the table that you now don't want to walk away and you're scared to make that call. And that really stuck with me. That I was like, what is this actually costing me in terms of time with my family, health, relationship with my husband, all the rest of it? What is it actually costing me? And that's when I kind of was like, hang on, I set out to build a different business model, and my priorities over time, as I've had my son and other things, have started to change. And I took the decision to not continue with that service line, with that business model, and then to transition and change. So I built a business that on paper, you're getting a lot of kudos for and like, oh, wow, you built, the 7-figure business and blah, blah, blah. In reality, it was, massive handcuffs in terms of the flexibility and the freedom that we were just talking to. And so it took me 15 months to be able to see through existing projects and transition and horrible aspects like making people redundant because I wasn't carrying on with that, exiting client relationships. It was a beast. but it's probably only now that, then to give you context, I can go away and do that, but I've had to go through the bloody trenches to get to that point and then come back to my intention, because I think, if I'm being brutally honest, I got excited by the dollars, I got excited by the opportunity, I got excited by nobody else was doing it, and so I just kind of leaned into it and ignored the rest of it. I saw the dollar signs and went for it and didn't really consider the other price I was paying.
Yeah, interesting one. That's a really interesting one because so many of us make decisions for the immediate return as opposed to the long-term sort of benefits, right? And whether that is business or in life generally. Now, with some of the decisions that you made, looking back, obviously hindsight being a tremendous teacher. Um, did you feel that you were making decisions based off what you thought was the right thing? Did you feel at the time, was there anything that was ringing inside you at the time that was going, Abby, what are you doing here? This, I don't know if this is right. But the head was going, nah, this is good. It's going to make me loads of money.
Probably. I think with everything, like a lot of my major decisions, you look back in hindsight and you're like, oh, there was a little bit of writing on the wall there. Whether it was a business decision, a relationship decision, an employee, I think I can look back on all of them and go, oh, I should have seen that sign. I should have leaned into it.
Mm,
I'm a sales professional, so when I see a big opportunity, like as for a living, I'm designed to spot the opportunity, lean in. And to be fair, I don't regret a lot of my decisions, because I actually think that it leads you to your next step. And I think that I can sit here and go, oh, well, that was hard. It was very hard, and it was hard for my team, not just me. But it led us to our next step. And now a lot of those relationships that we built in that part of the business, we've transitioned over to our offering today. And so you could actually argue some of the success we're now having with building more of a membership, digital, scalable model, we wouldn't have had that. And I wouldn't get the keynote speaking that I get, that gives me access to lots of people, which helps our membership. I wouldn't have got any of that if I hadn't done that step, because it gave us a lot of kudos for the types of businesses we were working with. It gave us kudos and credibility for the results we were getting. And so I actually look at it and go, I don't really think, like anything, I don't really think you can take it back, because you can go, that potentially was a pivotal step on our journey to get us to the next phase. But it was definitely, for want of a better phrase, coming back to center to go, hang on, that's not the business model that I really want to do moving forward.
mm. Now, I want to ask you a question. I want to take a 90-degree turn if I can.
Go for it.
I want to ask you about values and your values, because values are bastardized, right? Values are just they're like cereal box stuff that a lot of people don't really pay much attention to. But if we don't wake up, we're going to realize that it's going to bite us on the arse if we don't understand what they are, right? What's your firstly, what are your values as a human being? And secondly, what's your opinion on values as pertains to your world, your world of sales and GTMs and things?
Yeah, look, I think that for me, in terms of my values, I think the most important from a business perspective, and it gets overused, like you said, but for me, there is that absolutely, are we aligned? Is there accountability? Is there honesty? Is there integrity? Like, I have a massive trigger around fairness, and I think I have a pretty big radar for it from the field I come from, of like that BS radar. And so if I'm going to work with someone, I really need to know, can I trust them? Is there honesty there? Is there that integrity? I have a massive thing around accountability.
Mm,
If you work for me and with me and so on, it's just like, take ultimate accountability. Don't pass the buck. Don't push it off to somebody else. Look, I often, when anything goes wrong in the business, I have to look myself in the mirror, and whilst I can blame the client, the employee, the whatever, I have to look myself in the mirror and go, what could I have done differently, or what did I do that made that okay and acceptable? So I think a lot of and whether it's a relationship or not, I think a lot of the values for me, even with my son, I don't care what he does as long as he's honest with me. And sometimes when he's done something he shouldn't, but he says to me, Mom, I did this. um, I value that honesty, and that builds the trust. And with clients, I've walked away from many opportunities if I actually detect or have heard or just sort of know from credible sources there's a lack of integrity there. I'm just not interested. I want to surround myself with good people. I want to surround myself in positive environments. And in terms of how does that play out I think a lot of the time, yeah, talk is cheap. Their values on a wall or on an employee induction handbook somewhere. I had a conference recently that's probably the best I've ever seen, where they had like a little booklet for the conference for every single attendee, but they started talking about some of their values in action. They tied it back into everything at the kickoff in the conference. Then they had their principles and tied that back in, and they were constantly being reinforced. They were constantly being talked about. They were constantly raised by the leadership team. So there was a level of like living and breathing it. I just read a book about Amazon, and Amazon was very similar in terms of the systems, the processes, the structures they put in place to bring to life some of their values and principles. So I think that's the difference for me is it just somewhere on a website, or is it actually tangibly in your processes, your day to day, your what you're doing that brings it to life? And that's the practicing what you preach.
Big time. I've had a lot of business owners, and again, you can extend this to families really, where leaders of the group, whether it's family, whether it's with parents, or whether it's business owners or whatever, they a lot of questions coming at me of how do we, either gain or maintain a connection with our staff, with our kids? How do we, how can we keep our staff from leaving? All this sort of stuff. And a lot of it boils down to, for me, a lot of it boils down to your identity. But then and then we come into this values conversation. This is why I've asked you the question, because my concern with a lot of people, whether it is business or personal, I think there's a growing problem with respect to understanding our own identity
Mm,
and how that translates from a values point of view, because your values make up who you are, right? Essentially, from an identity point of view, you are one person that I feel tremendously confident that you are very, what your North Star is from an identity point of view. You're very sort of very grounded, like I mentioned earlier on, in who you are, what you're about, why you're about, and all that sort of stuff, right? In your journey, though, I mean, how many, like, what are the sort of conversations that you've been having, whether it's personal or professional, where there's just been this distinct lack of, you talk about complete accountability. I would argue that it's very difficult to take complete accountability if you don't actually understand who you are.
yeah.
And so talk to me about that with respect to own it, relate this accountability to the values piece with respect to how people buy in or don't buy in, whether it's from a product point of view, because your identity flows through your products as well as your services. From a business side of things, right? Your products need to represent your identity, like with Apple, for example. That's how they rock and roll. But from your side of things, give us a bit of an MO. You're theorizing around how values play out when you talk about this, doing what you say you're going to do, and really living those values out. But where's the gap? Where's the missing piece? Because for a lot of people, there is a huge missing piece between understanding what your values are and then seeing them play out in real life.
Mm. I did an activity years ago, and I probably should, this conversation sparking my brain to go, oh, I need to do that again, where I did a diploma in positive psychology, and it was a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant bit of study. And we had to actually write about what are our values. And I actually struggled with it a bit of like, what are my values? I don't know. When you see all the values cards on the table and you're like, yeah, all of those. And I think that it really challenged it. And then I think what's interesting is then often I journal quite a bit and having that reflection on, am I actually living up to my values or not? And that comes back to the ultimate accountability and honesty piece of I'm the same with myself, of like actually having an honest conversation with myself of going, am I actually living up to that value or not?
Mm.
And I think that's where for me, it's like if you look at all I love James Clear's work with Atomic Habits, and he talks about, you want to change your habits, you want to change your behaviors, have the identity. So I identify as being like a high performance person in terms of how I roll. And when I'm not living up to that, and I know I'm not living up to it, it does create a bit of an identity crisis. And then you've got to look at, okay, well, am I living by the behaviors? And so on. And then, like I said, coming into, am I living by my values? So I think for me, sometimes journaling and that sort of process brings me into alignment. And also surrounding myself, I just wrote an article on this today, surrounding myself with people who are not yes men and are happy to also call me on my own stuff. So bring you down to earth. So I've got a mentor who, to be honest, I would credit most of what I've done in my success to her guidance. And we were together yesterday, and
Name drop. Come on, name drop.
oh, her name is Sarah Denby Jones. She is a weapon. She is incredible. I love her, and I would accredit most of what I've done to her guidance. And she built a very successful business in London, sold it, and now has sort of gone into the retirement phase of her life. But poor lady can't escape me and still has to mentor me. She can't get rid of me. You know that there's always one you can't get rid of. I'm not.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But we met up yesterday, and it was kind of interesting because we were literally just like, this is crap, this is good, that's working, no, I'm not sure about that. And whether it was business or personal, like on personal levels, I was saying to her about what I'm doing personally, or like this doesn't feel right, or whatever it might be. But there's just no filter with us because we've known each other so long, and she will call me on my own bullshit. And likewise, I've got someone in my team in particular who is brilliant at being like, yeah, but Abby, how does that align with the priority you were talking about last week? And calling me on, yeah, but I didn't think we were doing that. And so I think, I know I'm sort of morphing the question a little bit, but I think sticking to your values, living by your values, understanding your values, yeah, part of it's the self-reflection and the journaling and am I aligned? But then I think part of it is also surround yourself with the people who are not just, you know, drinking the Kool-Aid and telling you how wonderful you are. They're the people who are also asking really healthy, challenging questions
Mm.
that also make you go, oh, and think about it.
Yeah, yes, I think irrespective of where you are in your life, gang, and this is something for your notes, that irrespective of whether you're just starting out in life from a career or a parenting or whatever it is perspective, the success cannot be a solo game. It really can't be a solo game. We all need people from the sidelines at one stage or another to tell us, what's happening behind us, because we can only see what our eyes are pointing at, metaphorically or physically. And sometimes you need that coach on the sidelines to shout and point and say, "Nah, you need to get back over there," or watch what's behind you, or look out, this is happening, or whatever, right? And it's really interesting because you'll have lots of people that come to you now, right? You've got your membership, and you've got people that come to you for guidance and so on and so forth. And knowing where you come from now, in the UK, I know that you will not be one that will stand for BS, right? And you will be very quick on your calling out of said bullshit, which is amazing. It's probably why we get on. So it's really interesting that you will, from your point of view though, and this is one thing I want to ask, because I can hear a few people saying, yeah, I know about getting a coach, I've thought about it, blah 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 blah. Have you had people that have come to you at a stage where it really does feel like it's too late? Have you had people where you've got the alarm bells ringing in your head saying, this could be too far gone here, whether it's business or personal or whatever it is? And how have you managed to help them, or what are the steps that you've recommended for them? Because like I said, I've got people that I can hear that are listening to this going, yeah, I've thought about getting a coach and I've procrastinated. And I know I've come across a few people where I've had to say, look, man, I don't know if we're gonna need to talk about pulling the pin here. So talk to me about that, like, because they always say that the best time was yesterday, the next best time is today, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But how can we, like leaders like you and I, how can we help people to just take a breath and take that leap? Because a lot of people do leave it too late, if ever at all.
Yeah, look, I don't do coaching today, but I guess in the work I'm doing, working with people, businesses, having team members, friends, parent, you're always coaching in some way or shape or form. In terms of the too far gone, I'm a bit of a optimist in terms of my outlook, and I read so many different, whether it's, I don't know, entrepreneur success stories or all different walks of life where people have like really come back from rock bottom. And sometimes I almost think, like, I had a dreadful year. I think it was like year before last. It was a horrific year where everything was crashing hard. And I think that almost sometimes you've got to hit rock bottom to then do something about it and to come back. So I think there's been some incredibly inspiring journeys and stories of people. So I would never be one to say that's too far. I have constantly, when I was in corporate, I had mentors. Since I've gone out on my own, I've had mentors. I actually think the biggest power from a mentor is not them telling me what to do, but them asking me the right questions. And sometimes all they need to do is ask the question. Or my mentor and I have a joke about, I send her before we meet up what we affectionately call Abbie's love letter, because we're both sarcastic and British. And it's essentially my essay of just waffling crap. But through the process of sending her an email of being like, and this happened, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm not sure about that, it's almost therapeutic and journaling. And I heard something really interesting the other day that was someone was saying, in the age of AI, where we're not really doing that as much, are we actually missing that trick where we're not going through that process? And even by the time I get to the end of my love letter, I then most of the time have actually had enough processing and journaling to then go, oh, I know what my next step is. It's so obvious. And we joke that it's not even for her to agree with. It's more me to process. So I think if you're not at a point that you don't want to engage a mentor, or maybe you're challenging yourself of, can I afford to engage a mentor, whatever it might be, even just that journaling process is something you can do right here, right now. But yeah, I'm a bit of a optimist in terms of it's never too late. Go for it. Do it.
I love it. I love that, and that's not a bad. That's not a bad thing to add to your notes, gang. Cups. That whole cliche, cup is either half full or whatever you want it to be, right? Now, I really wanted to ask you, when we're talking about AI, and this is probably the main thing I wanted to dig into with you, because you are very much in this space and you are very much taking advantage and working the space to the best of many people's abilities, to be fair. But I want to talk to you with respect to the what's becoming a very standard rhetoric about the fear that AI is taking over. Right? I thought you'd be a really good person to talk about this, because it's easy for someone that has a good handle and understanding of AI to be able to say, nah, that's nonsense. It's just how you use it, blah, 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 blah. But do you understand where people's concerns come from? And if you don't, like, what is your thoughts? Whenever you hear this sort of topic coming up, which I'm sure you would have heard ad nauseum, what's your first reaction? And feel free to get on your high horse about this. If you've got a high horse to get onto, feel free to jump aboard. Talk to me about this whole notion that AI is taking over.
Yes, look, I get it and I can relate to it. When I was first reading, and I'm like a turbo geek in terms of reading, learning, watching keynotes, talks, all the rest of it. And I was listening to one about AI agents, and I come from a technology background, like having worked for IBM. I'm not saying I'm technical, but I probably get it more than the average person. And I was watching this keynote, and I think it might have been the Salesforce CEO keynote, talking about AI agents and what they're doing. And I literally was like, playing it back, listen again, playing it back, listen again. I'm like, they're not even speaking English. I don't even understand this. And my brother and I had a conversation, actually. I think we were talking about like the metaverse and all this sort of stuff. And my brother and I were like, God, this is what our mum and dad must have felt like, where you're like, what the beep is going on?
Yeah.
So I can relate to it. I can relate to the overwhelm of it because I feel it every day. My husband works in IT and he does a lot around AI, and every 30 seconds I look at my phone and there's a text message going, check out this, check out that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm drowning. The way I've tried to tackle it is go, what am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to do? And then what is a good user case? Just one, start with one that would help. So in our business, our first user case was we created our own chat GPT. Sounds fancy. It took about 10 minutes, $30, and watching a YouTube video click by click to set it up. That has saved us hours and hours and hours and hours. Now, crap in, crap out. We absolutely finesse copy, we tweak it, we tailor it. I tend to drop my little boy at school and then I talk into ChatGPT around, I want to do this in my newsletter and I want to talk about that and here's some examples and blah, 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 blah. And then it turns it into our content piece based on what it's trained on and how our content's produced. Um, and so it's saved me huge amounts of time. But I think that what I've also set with my team is, what's one thing you can play around with and experiment this week? So not 20,000 things, not 10 billion things, but just one thing. And it might be, how can I use ChatGPT a little bit better? It might be something else, but I think it makes it, it's that like slow and steady wins the race, because there's that continuously testing, learning, and trying. And I think the person that nails this is Adam Grant, the organizational psychologist who wrote Think Again. And he has an extract that says, we used, oh, there you go. So Think Again, hang on, is that one.
Yeah.
For anyone on the screen, that one. And he has this piece where he says, we used to view intelligence was the ability to learn. And that's kind of how we defined intelligence, your ability to think, your ability to learn. But actually, in a turbulent world, is our intelligence actually our ability to rethink and unlearn? And I look at it as, it's here, it's happening, it's going. You kind of don't really have a lot of choice, but to go, where is the opportunity in this? And anything that's happening for me, whether it's big, whether it's crap, whether it's good, like whatever, I look at it and go, where's the opportunity in this? There's a fantastic post from Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO talking about, where he sees the opportunity amongst AI. And I wrote that down, I journaled with it, I played with it, and just going, how do I make this the best thing that's ever happened to me? How do I make it the best thing that's ever happened to my business? Where is the opportunity in this? So I know that was kind of quite a lot of waffle, but break it down, start small. I keep a repeat offenders list of where I'm spending my time and what's really time consuming and boring and could be better spent. And then I'll try and find an AI tool that will do that for, or help me, or do a proportion of it. And I think that's the way that you remove some of the overwhelm from it. But I think the the final bit of my high horse on this is, if you look at any Gartner as sort of one of the leading research organizations globally, you look at any Gartner information right now on what are leaders focusing on, who are the businesses that are thriving, who are the teams that are thriving. It is all about your ability to embrace change and adapt. The top sellers, one of three key competencies is tactical flexibility. A stat just came out recently that organizations that are like built for design, for adapting and leading into the current speed of change, 3.3 times more likely to have commercial success. And I actually just published an article on it today, so it probably helps my high horse, that it's like, I actually think this is the biggest opportunity right now. It's not about your sales skills or your marketing skills or your whatever area of the world you're in. It's like, what's your ability to lean into this and think again? That was a high horse. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. I wanted you to jump. I wanted you to hop on, and lean in and think again. I really like that Adam Grant reference there. Is it the ability to learn, or is it the ability to unlearn? Which is you could you could say that is probably why our kids end up being some of our best teachers, right? Because a lot of the time they haven't learned some of the stuff that creates limitations in how we think and feel and act and be and do. They haven't had the opportunity to learn some of those restrictive behaviors and restrictive experiences, right? And then they just show up as who they are, which is ultimately what we as adults try and get back to in some sort of reformed, refined process, right? But I think you're absolutely right. I think the word overwhelm is probably, it is absolutely one of the best words to use for this. It's the volume of, it's the sheer scale of overwhelm and the scale of progress and whatnot. Interestingly, though, one sort of trend that I'm seeing starting to grow. You're absolutely right. Where everything you just said there about embracing change, tactical flexibility, and all that sort of stuff, absolutely prominent and prevalent. But I think because the volume of focus on AI and so on and so forth that is going on now, it's almost like it's not plateauing, but it's almost like people are starting to get to grips or starting to understand and feel the way around it and sort of feel comfortable with that volume, that scale of progress that it's showing and whatnot. And it's starting to make people realize that, oh, hold on, this is allowing us a chance to be human again. This is allowing us an opportunity. And so, therefore, the other trend that I'm starting to see is this whole piece of bringing back a degree of humanity into process, into organizations and whatnot.
Yeah.
Not fluff. We're not talking, you know, away days and team bonding days and team builds and all this sort of stuff, but actual tangible, visceral, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, humanity into people's organizations and what have you, which is a really fascinating thing because you will have said, as you said yourself, you have your repeat offenders list, right? And if just as a little one, just quickly, how do you identify a repeat offender?
I keep notes in the back of my notebook and go, gosh, I'm spending so much time writing our blog, as an example, or whatever it is, or admin.
Mm.
And then I go and keep on looking at, because sometimes what you think is going to be a repeat offender isn't. I have
Mhm.
organizations speak to us going, oh, we spend so much time doing X. And when we do like a little mini 2-week time audit, we're like, actually, that's not really the biggest offender. The biggest offender is this over here. So it's kind of to get a bit of, quantitative data, even if it's just jotted down in the back of your journal. And then I'll go, okay, that's what's consuming so much of our time. How could that be done more efficiently? Is there a good AI user case for that? And then I
Nice.
explore it. And I kind of just want to actually come back to your previous point about more human. My area of expertise is around sales, but I think this is kind of a point for us as humans as well. And sort of building on your point, there was a 70% increase in demand for relationship development skills, like boosting relationship development skills last year. So when it comes to sort of sales skills, and it's because it's kind of going, okay, what can AI do with the admin and the staff and the pieces that I can get going there? But then what are the really, really human skills that actually now stand out? And I think we're in a really cool age where the human skills stand out. I went to a hotel the other day and I got a handwritten card and note, and I was like, oh my God. And it really stood out. And so it is really interesting that AI is ironically creating some interesting opportunities to stand out with the human side too. So I
Yeah.
build on your point there.
Yeah, oh, massive. This is where I feel that I'm hoping that a few more of us leaders can really beat the drum in that, if you're really, really anxious about this and you're really resisting the change and resisting this, and really getting consumed by this overwhelm, the challenge, like you said, it might not be a case of AI being the problem. It might be a case of you might not be able, and it comes full circle back to what we were talking about earlier. You might not understand who you are, and this might be exposing that in a way that you've not had it exposed before because of the fact that we are being gifted. And this is the thing, this can gift us time. This can gift us the commodity that we only have a finite amount of. This is giving some of it back to us, right? Which allows us to feel into more of our human side and what have you, and our emotive, relatable side, and so on and so forth. But for a lot of people, they're really sort of looking at them going, shit, I didn't realize I didn't know myself, or I was too busy being plugged in that I didn't realize I've not had a chance to actually understand who the hell I am in the first place. And before I let you go, have you had people that have really, have you recognized a distinct lack of understanding of one's identity?
I think like we've all probably crossed paths with people like that, but I also think sometimes if I look again about my accountability piece, I look closer to home. I have absolutely, and I was going to sort of pick up on this before when you're talking about it. I've absolutely had points where things have threatened my identity. When I first became a mum, I found that really challenging. How I had this identity of this hardcore person who worked and, I don't know, business owner, and this is me. And all of a sudden I'm like covered in vomit in my pajamas and can't structure a sentence and haven't slept in days. And that was a massive identity shift for me. So I found being a mum has been challenging. I then found it challenging after I was like, yeah, I'm going to scale this multi-million dollar business and I'm going to sell it and maybe buy a cocktail and sail into the sunset.
Mhm.
And then I kind of was like, back to your question, definition of success. Yes, I'm still driven and I want to scale a business, but I want to do it differently. And I'm going to actually take a few steps back to take a step forward to redesign. I then had a massive identity piece and had to also keep my own ego in check because, you know, that had been a really cool story of, you're building, scaling a multi-million-dollar business. And so
Mm,
I would also say, yes, of course, I know people who fit in that camp, but I also think I am that person too, where I've had plenty of times where I've had to actually question something's rocked my identity of who I think I am, or my, like I said, my behavior's not living up to my values. So I think I'm just as much in that boat a lot of the time as well. And you go through periods where it doesn't feel right, and then you realign again.
yeah, completely. Yeah, it's okay. And I think that's one thing that I think we need to accept, that it's okay to have your values brought into question, because sometimes they need to be questioned,
Yeah.
right? And our values set, it, like you said, it's an evolving thing. Like your success definition is an evolving thing. Our values can be an evolving thing depending on where we are in life, who we are in life. If we become parents, if we become grandparents, if we become this, if we become that, become the other, and different values come into our being depending on where we are in our lives, right? So it's okay to question and just check and road test, and just test the validity of your values at one stage or another. It's absolutely fine for that to happen. And all being well, you can look at it from a constructive point of view instead of a deconstructive point of view. In just going, you know what? Yep, cool. My values are sweet as a nut, rock and roll. Or, all right, okay, well, let's have a bit of a reassessment. And then from there, you reassess all your different elements of what's going on in your life, whether it's home, work, parents, career, hobbies, interests, all that sort of jazz, right? And then you get to check if everything's in alignment or not. I think that's healthy, right?
Yeah. No, I think everyone does. And I think, like I said, I think where I struggled the most is I had this Instagram view of the world, whether it was an Instagram view of, having a business and a baby, or an Instagram view of, running a business, or whatever it is, right? And there's always that Instagram view of the world. And then I think there's the reality that anyone you speak to is in reality having these same conversations. I read Oprah Winfrey's book, What I Know for Sure. And she said every single person that when she ran the Oprah Winfrey show that she had on the sofa, be it from Tom Cruise to whoever else, every single person when they stopped recording said, "Was that okay? Was I okay? Like, oh, did I come
Mm,
like this or that?" And so I think that sometimes we think that what's wrong with me, and I don't like it when people try and put me on a pedestal on certain things. So I'm like, behind the scenes, I'm having the same conversations as everybody else, going, what the beep am I doing? What am I going to be when I grow up? Oh, I wasn't at my best there, or like, oh, is this still the direction that I want to go? Like, we're all having the same conversations.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Hey, Abbie White, I'm very, very conscious that I've taken up plenty of your time, and you've been an absolute superstar. And she was very patient, as I had a comedy of errors before we jumped in this thing in the first place. So thank you so much for your patience as well. Hopefully, I'm sure that is one of your said values for you. Um, Abbie, before I let you go, though, there's always one last question that we finish this thing off with, and that is, we're all looking for, the next horizon of success for ourselves, and we're always wanting to evolve and improve as we go along. As you head towards the next definition of successful human for you, what is the one thing that's missing from your game that you know you need to bring in or improve or work on or begin?
I need to improve right now a lot around my well-being. You would know the journey well of, doing keynote speaking as we do, traveling for work as we do. You don't really build a consistent routine of, oh, I work out on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Like, but I've just been in New Zealand. I was then on a plane. I was then somewhere else. So I think I know and appreciate the value. And this is one of the I, am I living up to it pieces. I talk a lot around protecting your well-being, whether that's working out, your fitness, going to the gym. For me, it's always been how I release stress, how I process, how I think is like going for a run, going to the gym. And I would say at the moment I've been still doing it, but not as consistent and not living up to my best. And I know for the next stage for me, I need to kind of try and master that and call BS on my own excuses of, well, I'm traveling, I'm in a different place every day, because I look at someone like a Chelsea Pottinger who does, and she still manages to do it. So that's
Mm.
probably the one for me.
I had this exact conversation about a month and a half ago with someone, and I asked them, I said, I was in the middle of my 12 flights in 16 days, or whatever the hell it was. And I said to someone in Sydney, I said, Have you got some sort of routine here? Like, I need to work this shit out. And she goes, nah, my diet goes to shit. It's a problem. I know it is, and I've still not worked it out. And I'm like, good, good to know. But you're absolutely right, man. I got very frustrated when I couldn't get into a gym to lift some heavy things and whatnot. And then I had someone say, dude, why don't you just do something that doesn't require equipment?
Yeah.
I'm like, and of course I could have thought of that myself, but at the time I thought I just found the excuse, didn't I? Of not doing something, you know.
I'll actually share with you really quickly. And my brother is a running coach and a triathlon coach. And when I was giving him all my wonderful excuses, which are really fantastic, my brother said to me, Abby, Barack Obama trained every single day before he went into the Oval as president. And he plays basketball a lot. He exercises every single day because he knows the value of it. Do you perceive that you are busier than Barack Obama when he was president? And I'm like, well, he's got probably childcare solutions. He's probably got, a nanny and a few
He's
assistants.
got about 20 bloody security. He's got 20 staff bloody wiping his ass.
I know. But then you also had to go, but he still had all the excuses in the world not to. And I'm sure he had pressing, urgent things that day, but he knows the value of it and always did it. And so I think that that's where, yeah, I think it's time for me on that one to call a little bit of BS and be a bit more consistent is the word.
Agreed. Agreed. I'll jump into that boat with you on that one. Hey, look, Abbie White, it's been an absolute joy having you on the show. I really want to have you back at some stage and dig into a bit more of the personal stuff, if possible, because you are an exemplary example of someone that a lot of people can wonder if people like yourself a lot of people are struggling with the whole haves versus the have-nots, and you come across as someone that has the world at their feet. But team, hopefully after today, it's become unequivocal that Abbie has put in the hard yard. She has earned every single bit of the recognition and success that she has got, and she is not even part way to where she wants to be, I'm sure. So Abbie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, team. I'm sure you've got plenty of notes. I sure as hell have. My pen is actually smoking a little bit, I think, off the amount of notes I've just taken off that one. Make sure that you go and revisit this episode. All the show notes, Abbie's stuff is going to be on there, her links to and all that sort of jazz. I highly encourage that you connect or at least follow this incredibly inspirational individual. Until next time, though, gang, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, of course, and take care of yourself and each other. And we'll speak to you again on the next episode.